forward.
Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege and pleasure of being joined by my Sheikh, Murshid, friend and brother, Shaykh Wahid Azal of the Nur Fatimiyya Sufi order, who returns in part 32 in this series of dialogues and conversations that we are having. And in the latest episode in part 32, Sheikh Wahid is going to address the Cuck Mahdi who's hiding behind the skirts of CESNUR and the recent defamation and slander we have seen from these people against the Noor FSO and the Sheikh. So without further ado, Bismillah, Noor alaikum, and Khush Ahmadid to our beloved Sheikh Wahid Azal.
أعوذ بالله العلي العظيم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. Alaikum Nur, everybody. Boy, this story is turning out to be a real comedy sketch in every sense. Both the Ahmadi religion of LARPing and plagiarism, as well as their handler, CESNUR or CESNUR, however you're supposed to pronounce the acronym, have really overstepped. And in their overstepping, they have made me into a banner now that people can rally behind on multiple levels. And, this was a strategic mistake on their part. But it also, what it says very clearly is that the two monographs, Wake Up and The Goal of the Unwise, did their trick. Because when you listen to either the speech that this Rosita Saryatier, or however you're supposed to pronounce her name, said in this Supremacy of God conference in Crewe, England, earlier in the month of August, and then the article version of it that appeared in Bitter Winter, the publishing of CESNUR or CESNUR itself, they have really given the game away that my writings, coupled with the journalism of B. Schofield, has really ripped these people a new one, and that they have no answers for anything that we have said. They're trying to frame it, it's just so transparently porous and ridiculous. They're trying to frame it as a human rights violation, trying to claim that the writings and this journalism and whatnot is creating a human rights problem for AROPL in Iran and in the Middle East. As far as I'm concerned, that is a canard. I find it very interesting, but these are the same sorts of arguments that I was hearing from the Baha'is about 20 years ago, when they were saying things like, don't criticize us in public because of the ramifications for the Baha'is of Iran. So, the Ahmadi religion of LARPing and plagiarism is now, basically latching on to the same argument in their own case. But the fact of the matter is that, as I have argued, and which they have no answer for, is that this whole outfit is a psyop. And not only a psyop, it is a startup whose main handler and investor is obviously CESNUR and Massimo Introvini and that entire crowd of pseudo-academics and pseudo-scholars who are on his payroll. So they haven't answered the charges, the meticulous historiography that I put forward in the first monograph about the untenability of some of these hadiths that these people are using to try to justify themselves. They haven't responded to the fact that this whole claim of being the Yemeni is a earlier claim that the primal point, the Bab, already made himself 150 years ago. And then when we moved into the second monograph, The Goal of the Unwise, the fact that I have framed CESNUR as a cult lobby, an NRM lobby, professional lobby organization, they haven't addressed any of that. They have latched onto some of the monikers I used for that. For example, they seem to be incensed by the fact that I have called them a Sabbatian Frankist outreach group, which, as far as I'm concerned, is precisely what they are. But they haven't, remotely touched on the historical framing of that, and the fact that the historical framing is actually located in actual scholarship. So they've tried to reframe all of that as being anti-Semitic, which is actually a ridiculous charge. especially given the fact that Sabbatian Frankism is considered by mainstream Judaism to be a serious heresy. Never mind the fact that we know this is documented history, that the Frankists, the most radical wing of the Sabbatian movement, themselves were absorbed into Roman Catholicism, which is the religion of Massimo Intrabini and some of these other CESNUR people. So what it appears is that they have launched an extremely lame public relations attack and smear campaign, but they haven't gotten anywhere because I immediately responded to it in a 3-day period. I wrote another monograph in 3 days and self-published it and uploaded it to the National Library database here in Australia, which makes it a permanent piece of writing that other scholars around the world can now draw on as a bibliography about this group. But more than anything else, this actually unmasks Abdullah, Hashem, and his entire outfit itself. It tells me that despite all their, megalomania and delusions of grandeur, that when they are called on the floor by someone like me who knows his history, who knows his philosophy, they have not only no answer, but they go hiding behind the skirt of their handler, CESNUR, and are basically crying. So this is a cuck behavior, right? This individual, as the so-called Mahdi, has revealed himself to be a weak character. Me by myself with the limited number of people around me, living on this far side of the world, has rattled them, and they have no answer to anything I have to say, any charge, let alone the stuff that B. Schofield has written. Never mind the journalism of the Guardian and Telegraph and other outfits who have also nailed these people to the wall. So now they're gaslighting basically and reverse narrativizing, trying to claim that they are the victims of a witch hunt and a propaganda war. But the evidence is out there, and there are groups and organizations like Fekritz, a federation of scholars and governmental people and people who are professionals who are alarmed at the rising power of groups like CESNUR and these various violent cults that they represent. And so the terrain has changed. So they claim that we are weakened and all that. But the fact of the matter is that when they behave this way and they devote an entire conference to trying to smear us and me and B. Schofield in particular, and then immediately afterwards they publish an article on their own organ, which is, in my opinion, this Bitter Winter is a CESNUR version of the Nazi Der Stürmer. This was the magazine of Julius Streicher. When they do these sorts of things, it basically reveals them for what they are, and they prove every last argument that I have made. And I think they realize what a threat I am by the mere fact that for the first monograph, Wake Up, I wrote a concurrent Arabic version to it, right? So they're trying to dismiss this as delusional and the rantings of someone on hallucinogenic plants. For the record, if this is such a threat to you, there are many others besides myself who have denounced you online, whether on YouTube and elsewhere, both former members, Christians, Muslims, etc. But the fact that they have zeroed in on me says volumes that my writing and my exposure of these people has kicked them in the ass, and that they have no easy way out of their predicament. So what they have launched in this smear campaign is, in fact, a Streisand effect trap that I laid for these people that they walked into. And so now they have elevated me as their foremost global opposition and the very banner that they were trying to prevent from being created. And that's me, and obviously also B. Schofield. We are the two faces of the global opposition, whether to CESNUR or to the Ahmadi religion of LARPing and plagiarism itself. Over to you.
Yeah, Sheikh, that's absolutely right. And I think you definitely did a number on these people in exposing who they are. And I highly recommend to all of the viewers and listeners, please read the publications that Sheikh Wahid has put out there, the part one and the part two, and the recent
Goal is the
uh,
wisecrack. Yeah.
yeah, all of the publications, including the recent Goal of the Wisecrack, rebutting this slander that this woman posted, Rosita woman posted on Bitter Winter. And that's the thing. This whole thing is a technical startup, and it's got the hands of the empire behind it.
Yeah.
And Sheikh Wahid has always resisted the empire and
But
like
it's an
exposed them.
empire that is waiting, and I find it quite hilarious that they roll out this Lithuanian Karen whose racism is so blatant in her article as well as her speech that it's just, what are they trying to, run away from? And it's quite, obvious, a sore thumb example. You have all these white Anglo-European scholars paraded at this conference, right, defending this project of theirs from a brown Iranian man. I mean, this is the classic trope of the things that Edward Said talked about in his magisterial Orientalism. And so I basically frame their entire discussion under that. And for me, this Rosita Sargiti, or however her name is supposed to be pronounced, basically discredited herself permanently as a racist. And someone who also is a complete ignoramus that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. She doesn't cite, footnote, note, critically discuss anything, analyze, nothing. It's just a litany of smears one after another. Some of them which are contradictory, but in the process, they have walked into a trap. It is, this is so beautiful, this whole situation. It is literally the verse of the Quran, Makaru wa makarullah wallahu khairul makirin. They plot and God plots, and verily God is the greatest of all plotters. Yes, indeed, the supremacy of God. And it is the supremacy of God itself over these PSYOP startup puppets of these intelligence operations, which is what CESNUR actually is. So, I am absolutely looking forward to their next response, because then that gives me another opportunity to write this all up again. So if I can go for a tit for tat with these people from now until hell freezes over, and they have no hope in hell in winning against me. They know, based on their behavior, they know I have their number. They know that B. Schofield has their number, and we're not going away. And furthermore, they should be very well aware that the law enforcement, community in this country, together with the intelligence community of this country, are watching, because I have thoroughly briefed them on this whole entire situation. Never mind, they all possess copies of my monographs. So I dare them to make a false step, because if they do, then this will backfire on such a spectacular level on them if they try to engage in any kind of criminality, that they might as well basically start to pack their bags, because this whole startup project is about to end if they step out of line anymore. We can keep it at the level of discourse. He said, she said, fine. I can engage on that level from now to eternity. But if you are going to successfully engage me, it is required that you answer the arguments, beginning with my rebuttal of reincarnation, which is one of the backbones of the doctrines that this Ahmadi religion of LARPing and plagiarism holds to. Then together they need to respond meticulously to historical critique that I have offered, refuting their justification for this Abdullah Hashem Abul Kazib's claim to Mahdihood. They need to address that. They need to address the nature of CESNUR itself. All of these things need to be addressed one by one. Failing that, they have lost the argument. As of now, they have lost the argument. Sure, you can pay platforms like YouTube, you can pay all kinds of platforms here and there to, push up your content. But the more this happens, the more you prove my argument that you are a startup company, that this is basically one of many iterations of this techno-feudalist game that we're witnessing during this time. And this, by definition, discredits you by your own hands, because you have no comeback. You have no argument to anything I have said, neither with evidence or with analysis.
Yeah, yes, Sheikh, that's so true. They can call you an anti-Semite, but they can never call you a liar. And I think you kicked them right in the nuts where it should be, and that's why their desperation is showing itself. And it's actually encouraging people with critical thinking and open-minded skills. Like, okay, for those that didn't know Sheikh Wahid Azal, now they're going to look into your work. So they actually gave you a banner and admitted defeat.
And like the truism goes, there's no publicity like bad publicity. The bad publicity is giving me a boost. Everyone and their dog is coming out of every nook and cranny wanting to find out what this is about. And immediately they're
Exactly.
finding Wake Up, they're finding the Goal of the Unwise, and now Goal of the Wisecrack. And so I did nothing, nothing, literally, God itself handed them a rope and now they're hanging themselves with it. So please continue to hang yourself. Allow me the opportunity to do what I do best. You attack, I document, and I write. That's what I
And
do.
you know what's funny is that I was looking at that video where they were talking about you, and it's of course it's that Tiffany woman who's leading the press
Yeah, and she's,
conference.
as I have said before, this woman is an Israeli, and she's obviously their Mossad handler. You know,
Yes.
so if this is defamatory, please, Tiffany, come to Australia, find a solicitor. Let's put you under legal exposure and find out what your pedigree is. If I'm wrong, I dare
Yeah.
you.
Yes, Sheikh, that's absolutely right. And the work that you have done, I like for the record, I've been with the Nur Fatimiyya Sufi order for 5 years. I've been with Sheikh Wahid Azal, and I'm always with him in this life and in Akhirah. And he has defeated all of his enemies, whether it's the Baha'is, the Dugan crowd, now AROLP, the CESNUR crowd. He has the force as the living mirror of the Bayan of the Supreme Mother Goddess and the sword of Imam Ali alayhi salam, the Dhul Fiqar. So whoever steps in front, be his guest. He will make sure that you are exposed to the world. And al-haq, the truth, is always prevailing. That is the Nur FSO. And Sheikh Wahid has definitely basically caused them an itch. And that's why they're showing their desperation in this current moment. And they're going to fail, just like the Duganists, the Baha'is, and all of the other people that tried to come and try to take him down. It didn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't. I'm merely a vehicle, and that is my function. It is the All High who is in charge. It is the Mother who is in command.
Yeah.
And I, to this day, I ask myself, why was I even, kind of put into this situation to even have to comment of these people? And the reason is simple, is because we are in a world right now full of algorithmic noise and utter bullshit, right? And
Yeah.
upstairs has had enough of it. So you can claim that I am, writing under the influence of hallucinogenic substances. For the record, I barely use any of these things anymore. The last cup of ayahuasca I had was probably 2 years ago. I don't need any of this stuff anymore. I've done my work. I do think that for certain people, these psychedelic plants are very valuable. But for me, I have transcended the need of any of this stuff for a while now. That process for me pretty clearly ended in Germany, and since that time, very every now and then, I may take a mushroom, and that's about it. I don't really need it anymore. My own practice, my own vicars, give me everything I need. I don't need anything else. So if that is the case, then they need to start to explain how it is that I could so lucidly write and analyze their situation in such a way that it raises their ire. So they have made an important figure, an important face out of me themselves. They themselves have given me the boost. So this is also a manifestation of that great Persian saying, Adu sabab al-khair shabad, the enemy shall be the cause of good. So this enemy, this shaitan, this devil, has actually elevated me by its own stupidity. And that's fine with me. Please keep it up. In fact, I insist that the Ahmadi religion of LARPing and plagiarism continue to make more videos with my face on it, not just one. Yes, it's defamation. Yes, it is actionable in law. I'm okay with that. I mean, I've lived through this with the Baha'is. I've lived through this with the Duganists. Allow these people to have their way, because each time any of these three have done it, they have only sought to elevate my cause from one attack to the next. They don't understand that the strategies that I work with are very different to those kind of strategies that these people can map out. I come from left field, like literally, and you can't figure me out. You can't predict what I'm going to do. You can even hack me. You can even read everything I do online, but you can't figure me out. I'm coming from a completely different angle that you don't see. And I do everything above board. I document everything. I publicize everything, and I put my name to everything simultaneously. Yes. So this is the difference between me and these crooks, is they have something to hide. I have nothing to hide, right?
I think Sheikh Massimo forgets that just how his Roman ancestors got their backsides handed to them by the Persians.
Yeah.
Now history repeats itself.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, if you go to Nakhshe Rostam, outside just a few kilometers from Persepolis, there is an effigy of Shapur, one of the Sasanian emperors, with one of the Roman emperors that he had defeated falling at his feet. And so, the Romans tried for centuries to try to conquer the Persians. And so there was this bitter back and forth war that lasted about 300-400 years, and they got their asses kicked every time. And Massimo Introvini, who I've labeled as the Mephistopheles of the age, is no different. He has met his match. And I am fine. If Mr. Massimo Introvini wants to continue to putting my picture and my writings up on his CESNUR page and defend, you have my permission, do it. Because everything that you do, I will capitalize on. Every last thing. Just like here. All you people had to do was to ignore me. If you had ignored me, this wouldn't have taken a momentum. But the fact that you gave me a limelight has now created a momentum of its own. What the government in Iran or Iraq or any other government in the Middle East does, that is their business. But the fact of the matter is that where you are located, and given the experience of former members, and given your attacks against me and B. Schofield and others, there is no way that you can frame your predicament as a human rights issue. It is not, right? An organization like the Ahmadi religion of LARPing and paid plagiarism has documented criminality. The death of members, the death threats, sexual abuse, all this stuff is documented. These are not things that you can easily brush aside. So these so-called academics that are lining behind the CESNUR banner, you have basically shot yourself and your own careers in the foot. You have no credibility at all. You are mouthpieces and you are tools of agendas much bigger than yourself. And you all already probably all know it yourselves. But I've put the torch all over you people, and this is the way it is. I am anti-cult. I don't belong to FECRIX, but I absolutely support what FECRIX is doing, and what Luigi Corvaglia, whose scholarship is impeccable. This man, I can't speak highly enough of him. When B. Schofield first introduced me to this man's writing about the cult apologist mafia, reading through those 5 parts of his expose was like revelation, what this man was saying, because everything that he wrote was like experiences that I have had on and offline, whether with the Baha'is or some of these other very kooky NRM cults. Now, one element that I should address, this Rosita Soroyiti, or however her name is pronounced, this Lithuanian Karen, is trying to label me New Age on the basis of a mistake that the scholar Milad Milani made. So I want to correct this point. No, I'm not New Age, right? I don't do the crystal thing. I don't do, although, rocks and stones are important from an occult perspective, in my view. I don't do the reincarnation thing. I don't do, the positive thinking to the exclusion of its opposites. I have a degree in counseling where I work with a Jungian as well as a Lacanian framework. In my private counseling practice, I am not New Age. The Fatimiyya is not New Age. We may be post-Islamic in the sense that the Bayan is the center of our beliefs, but the Bayan is not New Age. And you cannot rubricize the Bayan as New Age, nor can you rubricize the doctrines that I draw upon, such as Ibn Arabi, Sohrawardi, some of the Ismaili schools, etc., nor can you credibly try to rubricize these as New Age. The use of entheogenic plants has also a pedigree within the esoteric milieu of Islam itself. In fact, I may remind CESNUR and its various mouthpieces that it was the Ahmadi religion of light and peace itself that until quite recently was advocating the use of certain psychoactive substances. As a matter of fact, about 2 years ago, I found them, caught them red-handed, taking some of my writings on this online and reframing it and putting it on their website. So this is the height of hypocrisy, that where people like myself are denouncing a cult, such as the AROPL, we get branded as hallucinating and rants and that sort of thing. But the Ahmadi religion of light and peace itself is also using these psychoactive plants. So what does that do to them? But this sort of double standard and hypocrisy is replete, whether through Rosita Shorty's speech at this so-called conference of the supremacy of God, or whether in the published version of it that she put on Bitter Winter, the publishing arm of Massimo Introvini's CESNUR. So, okay, I have raised all your flags, all your ire. That means I have won, and I have put you on notice, and I've put your intellectual backs against the wall. Now you know who you're dealing with. You're not dealing with any Tom, Dick, and Harry out there. You're dealing with someone who's capable of going 15 rounds with you, okay, and not budging. So you have just actually admitted in public that I have knocked you down during these rounds, that you have no answer for anything I have said, and that I have thrown curve punches and curveballs and whatever else you want to call it at you, and that your back is against the wall. Funnily enough, one of the people that was commenting on B. Schofield's Twitter made a massive faux pas, saying the amount of damage, quote unquote, that B. Schofield had inflicted on these people, right? By writing her expose back in April in Guru Mag. The use of that word damage is quite telling. That means that the truth has rattled these people, and that despite their multi-million-dollar PR campaigns, nobody is buying the hype. So even whatever monies and whatever they're doing on social media, however much airtime that they're buying here, there, and everywhere, TikTok. This TikTok Mahdi, this Cuck Mahdi, Abdullah Hashem Abul Kazib, has been revealed to be an emperor without any clothes on. And that was done whether by B. Schofield, by The Guardian, The Telegraph, or by myself in a more meticulous, scholarly kind of context. Over to you.
Yeah, you're right, Sheikh. And now he's hiding behind Tiffany's skirt. I find this whole situation quite amusing for somebody who's claiming to be a messianic figure, a
Yeah,
Mahdi. And I mean, it's actually a big comedy.
it's a
That's
huge,
exactly what it is.
I mean, let's compare this behavior of Abdullah Hashem to that of the Bab. And this was, just remember that during the course of the attacks that the Bab was suffering at the hands of some of the Shiite ulama in the 19th century, Qajar Shiite ulama, he was under incarceration, under government incarceration, but yet he was replying to his accusers.
Yes.
And he was standing his ground, and the writings exist. And if these jackasses want samples of it to compare the Bab to this wannabe, they're more than welcome to look at this writing, because this stuff has amazing power to this day. One example of which is the reply of the primal point, the Bab, to Haji Mirza Agassi, the premier of Muhammad Shah, who was the man responsible for the Bab's incarceration in the first place. And the attacks that this man was responsible for within the setting of the royal court, all of these were responded to. Then other of the ulama, other of the clerics who were attacking the Bab and defaming him in the same terms, he was replying to these people one by one and holding his ground. But this Abdullah Hashem Abul Qazib is incapable of holding his ground. Instead, he has to hide behind the skirt of a lobby organization, which is an intelligence operation, in the form of CESNUR to defend himself. That tells you that this man has no honor. He is a cuckold. Period. Full stop. He can prove differently, but I don't believe he can, because ultimately, I don't think that Abdullah Hashim, even deep down, believes anything he's saying. This is all theatrics. It's staged. It's a psychological operation. Period.
This whole thing is a Western intelligence operation, and the whole technical startup and certain factions of academia, which you have dealt with also, the ivory towers, which are backing him.
Yeah.
It all correlates. Then you have CESNUR, which is the Roman Catholic head of the snake from that faction.
Yeah.
And they're all coming together with this person who's being housed and protected in England, right?
Yeah.
Then of course you have the MI6 connection,
Yeah.
the head of all these organizations, occult organizations. It's all in England, and this is where this guy is leading his cult, abusing his members, abusing some of the female people. I mean, this something's got to give, and they're being exposed. And that's why their act of desperation is showing now. Like, if they were truly strong in who they believed they were, they could have just ignored you. But they
That's what
put
I'm
them,
saying. I mean, if
they fell into the pit.
this is, I mean, if they had ignored me, this would be a projection of strength. That they have addressed me head on is an absolute admission of weakness.
Yes.
Right? If I'm a nobody, then why respond to me? But if I am really a somebody that is a real threat to you, then you are forced to respond. So you have just proven that I'm a real threat. And that then people are wanting to know, why am I a threat? Once they know, then they go to the monographs. And when they read the monographs, you know, the writing is clear in black and white that why that is the case.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll put the links in the description below for those that haven't read the books, for the part one and the part two, The Goal of the Unwise, and the recent publication with the Goal of the Wisecrack. I recommend to all of you, please read it and please spread the teachings, because what AROLP is doing, I'm even seeing it in Pakistan. They're making Urdu videos. They're trying to reach as many people as they can in different languages to try to amass as many cult followers as we can. This is an information war and a
Yeah,
spiritual war.
it is.
So
It
we
is.
have to we have to combat these people
Yeah.
wherever we can, so we save people from being targeted and abused potentially by this cult, whether financially,
And
emotionally, sexually.
this is the importance of what I have done here is, and especially for the authorities in this country, the mood in this country right now, and the government is walking a very uneasy tightrope. But on the agency, federal government agency levels, they are sick and tired of foreign interference in Australia,
Yeah.
right? So they're trying to curb it. And I'm helping them because this is one angle of it. So they're taking what I have submitted to them very seriously. And so they are following and monitoring this entire situation. And because this also allows them to frame possible infiltrations and incursions, either by ARLOP directly or CESNUR, or even if they're using, whether CESNUR or ARLOP, certain state actors or state adjacent actors that are using these two organizations as a front for foreign state actor operations on Australian soil. The government of this country wants to stop all of this. And so what I have done by offering all this information to them and putting all of this in their scope, they're now monitoring it. Right? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
why I'm saying that these people would have to be absolutely out of their freaking minds to try to do something here, because they cannot answer anything I've said. You know, they cannot credibly formulate an argument against it, and that's why they have to resort to smear. The Baha'is did the same thing. The Duganists did the same thing, and it was the height of hilarity to find Rosita Sortier actually linking and using the arguments of a Duganist docs blog from 2016, this revolutionary docs blog. She's using that as evidence, which is absolutely hilarious to me, given who this woman claims to be. She's a former EU parliamentarian. These Lithuanians are anti-Russian to the core. They are the very people that have been, have raised the hysterics before the so-called special operations of Putin in Ukraine. So they're anti-Putinists, and they're utilizing the information of their own enemy, their own sworn enemy, Dugin, the man responsible for stoking up all the anti-Ukrainian sentiments in Russia and pushing from the think tank ideological front in Russia, pushing Putin and the Kremlin towards that whole operation in Ukraine in the first place. This in itself proves to me these people have no fucking integrity at all. They are as dirty as it comes. Okay, so you want to play it that way? Fine. You're dealing with someone who's coming from left field that has your number. Let's rock.
Well, if you want to be Shaykh Wahid Azal's guest, then be his guest because he is the living mirror of the Bayan, and this is how it is. And I find this amusing, Sheikh, because if you get some of these people, because it all looks so professionally
Yeah,
choreographed, like a Hollywood studio.
yeah.
Like if you look at the villain of Iron Man 3,
Mm.
that's how Abdullah Hashem shows up. And if you get this guy in court under oath,
He
and
would
he would
crumble.
probably say, "Oh, I'm playing a character."
He would.
He would say that.
This is why, for example, he jumped ship from America when the Raelians sued him for the
Yes.
bullshit that he did against them. Um, Abdullah Hashem, from given his history, is petrified of walking into a court because I think he knows that if he was ever put under cross-examination, he would fold in 2 seconds.
Yes.
Right? And a good cross-examiner, a good attorney with good cross-examining skills would extract the contradictions almost immediately in his words, and he would crumble in 2 seconds. This is why these people don't want to go into a court. But this also tells you why then the MI6 is protecting them, and then you have this lobby organization like CESNUR yanking their and getting Abdullah Hashem and his black beanie posse to hide behind your skirt. So
This is a pattern, Shake, that I've seen not only with this character, but characters like Tate, Alex Jones,
yeah,
all of these people that are supposedly coming where they're building a cult following.
yeah.
Once they get them in a situation where they're under oath, they nine out
Well,
of ten they
they
always
crumble
say, "I'm playing a
because it's
character."
this is the problem that we have at this time, right? Um, I tried to explain this the other day to B Schofield or something because she couldn't get her head around the fact that how these people, these so-called academics, can so brazenly lie. I have seen this dynamic in a variety of different settings, whether it be in legal settings or academic settings going back to the 90s. This is a function of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism has now made people agenda driven. And so truth is not relevant. You speak at the level of your agenda. So if you are connected to a group of people, if your agenda is the agenda of CESNUR, then you speak from that agenda, and everything that you say is going through that filter. What it does is it creates within the person themselves, it creates some very deep cognitive dissonance from a psychological point of view. But what it also does is it muddies waters wherever it goes. This is the reality that we're dealing with, is corporate culture that is propelling this. This is the problem with this techno-feudalist, neoliberal capitalist paradigm that we're right now living in, because it is making people to become this. People are so connected to their pocketbooks, their career advancement or lack thereof, that they're willing to basically sell their souls to the shaitan in order to be, to protect themselves. And so you have this woman, Holly Folk, this just ridiculous, apologist, pseudo scholar, saying the most absolutely just unconscionable things, smearing critics, offering inverted narratives, things that don't, whether on an evidentiary basis or on a logical, analytical basis, unravel in 2 seconds. She's articulating this. Then this Rosita Chartier herself and others, they got their knickers in a knot as to why I sent her a email, this Holly Folk, after she did that video with them when she went to England. trying to frame it as if I was threatening this woman. Well, it doesn't occur to them that I publicized that letter immediately on my own blog, right? To prevent this sort of accusation from happening. And so if they had gone to the police to complain about an email I had sent to this woman, then obviously any jurisdiction that has looked at this issue has basically dismissed it as frivolous, right? The email is right there, and I reproduced the email again in the book, The Goal of the Wisecrack. So it just tells you that these people are, just snowflakes in the worst sense of that. They have thin skins, and these cult leaders that they are propping to the world, trying to attract people to these, into this hole, into this black hole themselves, are weak characters without anything to offer. So they're just repeating an advertising gimmick about themselves. It's all now becoming very old. So what CESNUR, what these fools, what Razia Shorte, what Holly Folk, and what all of these people have to understand, it's not just me who is exposing you. You are exposing yourself because your gimmick is getting old and people are beginning to see through it. You are assuming that the masses out there are stupid. This is your first mistake. Maybe, the mimetic war and, the perception management on the internet at some point fooled a lot of people. But in the last few years, this is no longer the case. People are waking up one by one to the kind of manipulations that are happening on and offline. They see right through you. And particularly a subculture like what Muslims, whether inside the Muslim world itself or outside, who are under relentless attack by these Western powers of techno-feudal capital, right? We just got, over 2 months ago, while I, just right after I finished The Goal of the Unwise, we saw the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, right? That despite all the rhetoric of Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, murdered and maimed civilian Iranians. If they had kept it to, attacking government officials or even Khamenei himself, which they didn't target, I would be fine with that, but they target Iranian civilians. I lost 2 dear friends of mine in that on the first day, on the 13th of June, in one of the first apartment blocks that was targeted. 2 of my friends, both opponents of the regime, a couple, both solid activists during the Women Life Freedom Uprising, who'd lost 3 family members to security forces in 2022, 2023. They were killed by these fucking Zionist demons. What did these people have to say for themselves? And they're trying to blame me for spreading poison about them. They are poison. They reveal themselves. I'm not doing anything. I'm just laying it all out. I'm just saying what everybody else is seeing. Your gimmick doesn't work. The lies are obvious. People see through you. I'm not the problem. You are. Go look at yourself.
Yes, Sheikh, that's absolutely right. And may those 2 friends, our colleagues, friends and brothers who lost their lives in Iran, may they rest in eternal peace in Jannah. Ameen. And we saw that in the recent situation on how Ahura Mazda actually kicked Yahweh's ass,
Yeah.
and how the Persian people, they have been here since the beginning of time. They will continue to exist. Just like how this technical startup of Abdullah Hashem and this cult is going to fade, so is the Zionist artificial state of Israel. And
Yeah.
now all nations are recognizing Palestine. It's all going in
Yeah.
the direction of justice.
Yeah. And this is the way that, the arc of the universe bends towards justice, even though it's a very slow process and it can be quite frustrating at times. Nevertheless, this is the way things work.
Yeah.
And, these people can do whatever they want, but they are ultimately the losers. And they threw
Yes.
the first punch. Let's not forget that. What I did as I documented.
Yeah.
And they got a problem with that? Well, that's their problem. Because now they've given me a bandwagon.
And I stress this very much because I've seen what this cult is doing, and they're targeting a lot of the Latin American countries. They're targeting a lot of other countries, even my home country of Pakistan,
Mm.
where they have a Urdu channel of AROLP. And I tell people, please have some common sense and don't fall astray to this cult. And I'm happy to see like some of the comments I've been seeing on YouTube and TikTok. People are just making fun of these people. And I think that's how they should be treated until they fade away into whatever hole that they crawled out of.
Mm. Yeah,
And how do you see this going forward, Sheikh, in terms of what's going on right now and where the world is going with America and how all of these cults are trying to preserve empire as it is with all this
they're
stuff
not
coming
getting
out?
anywhere. It's empire is crumbling. Um, and there's no two ways about it. There's nothing they can do. And see, this is what I've been saying all along. Empire, the Atlantic bloc will fall. The problem that we're going to face next is China. Now, I say this, there are a problem for a simple reason, because the authoritarianism of the Chinese is alarming. Now, I have a friend who has a different outlook on the Chinese, and I've been listening to them, and some of their arguments are very logical, but nevertheless, that the authoritarianism of China is alarming. And the
Hmm.
fact that they are polluters, right? From my environmental side has a problem with that. The fact that multipolarism in the way that whether the Russians are articulated or the Chinese articulated is a situation that we got between the First World War and the Second World War, and it was because of that model that someone like Hitler even came about. But the fact is that the unipolarism of the Atlantic American Anglo-American bloc has had its day. They're corrupt. Their own citizenry are up in arms about them. And in order to save themselves, they have spawned these far populist movements, whether it be Trumpism in the United States or the Front National in France, which was now basically not a candidate, Marine Le Pen, or the AfD in Germany, and so on and so forth. So these are all internal, what Marxists call internal contradictions. The internal contradictions of the Atlantic West are too many, and this society is crumbling at the seams. So, what needs to happen now is that we need to prepare for the world that is to come, that is going to have certain of these powers, whether we're talking about Putin's Russia or Xi's China or some of these other authoritarian blocs, North Korea, Orban's Hungary. These are the sorts of actors that are seeking to dominate this post-Atlantic, post-unipolar American world. That is what we need to be starting to prepare for, to
Yes.
push back against, because the mask is only going to change. And also, as you're seeing, and as Shahid Bolson has spoken about quite extensively, there is a massive amount of capital flight that is occurring all throughout Europe and North America into other parts of the world, whether it be South America, whether it be Asia, whether it be Africa. So the terrain is changing, and if one wants to put it that way, this Trump administration redux is merely about managing this crumbling
Hmm.
of the American empire. And so some of the crazy stuff that Trump has done since coming back into office again can only be read from that vantage point, that they are um, systematically pulling the pin from this balloon, which is America. And in the process, Europe itself will crumble as a world power. And so then the Chinese and whoever else and the Russians will begin to dominate. Um, the Russians are playing a very dirty game with Ukraine. That whole summit between him and Putin and Trump was a joke. Trump looked like a complete weakling and came out a complete fool at the tail end of this, with no guarantees offered about whether there will be a cessation of hostilities. So it's obvious that Putin is playing this guy like a violin.
Yeah.
And that means that the Russians are sitting there and fighting a long game. They are waiting. It's a war of attrition. They're just making Ukraine and the Europeans, right? Because Ukraine is just the proxy here. It's a slow grinding attrition. China is behind Russia. The Iranians are supplying drones to the Russians that have just wreaked havoc all over Ukraine. And for that very reason, that means that Russia and China are not allowing Iran to fall. So if Netanyahu gets a big idea to want to do a second attack on Iran, the next one is going to be much more devastating on Israel. So if
Yes.
these Iranian retaliatory salvos did a number on Israel, from some reports about 1/3, some reports saying higher, almost 2/3 of Israeli infrastructure was affected by these attacks by the Iranians. And so if it happens again, this time, Israel itself will find itself in this existential crisis that it has been fearing. And that is not a good situation to be with, because if the Israelis get there, that is when they will take the nukes out. So Allahu Alam, but there's a bright side to this. Their attempted final solution in Gaza is not getting anywhere. The resistance by whether the Qassam brigades or the various paramilitaries of Hamas and Islamic Jihad have did a number on the IDF in the last week. Which means that they're just as lethal and as dangerous as they've ever been. From what I'm reading online, Hezbollah itself in southern Lebanon seems to have regrouped, and this time they're ready. So if Israel starts to launches an attack on Iran, there's every possibility that Hezbollah will respond to them. The only danger for Lebanon is that this will force the Israelis to lean on this head-chopping Al-Qaeda regime in Damascus of Julani to invade Lebanon. So it will become absolutely messy very soon. But these are acts of desperation by the Israelis. At the end game, I think in the next couple of years, we will watch the actual implosion of Israel as a state. That is coming.
There's no doubt about that.
The population drain, there has been a sustained population drain out of Israel going back last 20 years. But as of October 7th, 2023, this population drain has escalated. Now, where a lot of these Israelis are going is very interesting. They're going to Cyprus. So Cyprus has gotten a massive influx of Israelis. Some of them apparently are coming via boats, like, just family yachts and that sort of thing. Others are going to Europe. My two very dear LGBTQ friends, Israeli friends, who were comrades, two Israeli refuseniks, two girls. They regularly give me briefs about the situation in Europe, and they said that they can't believe at the number of Israelis that are coming to Germany, and especially to Berlin, and applying for permanent residency in Germany. A lot of them are, children or descendants of Holocaust survivors, German Holocaust survivors. So they're returning to Germany. They talk to some of these people, and the writing is on the ground that, as far as they're concerned, this whole thing is unsustainable anymore. And the sort of psychological and psychic damage that has been inflicted on the Israeli body politic, sustained since 1948. But as of 2023, October 7th, has just gone to astronomical levels. A lot of people just don't, a lot of Israelis don't see how they can continue to live in a society like that anymore.
Well, yeah, they're not going to recover from this.
No, they're not. No, they're not going to. It's not.
Especially on the world level, Shaky. Australia is going to recognize Palestine at the UN.
Next month or this month. Yeah, very shortly.
And you have all of these new nations that are now popping up. I think it will get worse before it gets better, but I do have faith in the future and yourself there as a living mirror of the Bayan, teaching us, guiding us, and protecting us not only from cults like AROPL and CESNUR, but the other stuff that's happening behind the scenes. And I think there is a wise move to watch China, because even with Australian interference, I know China has done a lot of that as well.
China has done this on an economic level, so they have bought a lot, and also they have bought a lot of local and national politicians they have in their pocket. They have bought, access to these ports up in Northern Australia and in Queensland and Northern Territory. with 99-year leases. And so this is what I don't understand when you have the conservatives in this country ranting and raving about Chinese influence. It was they themselves who gave these 99-year contracts of ports in Northern Australia, in Queensland and Northern Territory.
They're applying the British method, what the British did with Hong
Yeah,
Kong, the
they're
100-year
doing
lease.
exactly the same thing, and they've learned well. I just hope the Chinese, um, the Chinese behave very aggressively. On the one hand, I understand it. On the other hand, it's alarming because if they are wanting to, if this whole multipolarist vision is actually how they brand it as the best thing since sliced bread, then it's incumbent on them to behave differently,
Yeah.
and they're not. They're behaving exactly the same way as the Americans behaved, in the same aggressive fashion. And what I'm saying is that we need to move beyond that kind of world in order to make a better world. Otherwise, we go from one day from the Anglo-American unipolarism to then a Sino version of the same thing. And this is not good. This is just changing masks.
Yep, you're right. And that's why we need that third force to hopefully manifest, inshallah, in our
Sure.
lifetime, and
Yeah.
the teachings of the Bayan that you have given us to bring that into fruition and practice and have an equal and just society for all human beings. But the first step is to make sure that those that are perpetuating this kind of deception against humanity, like
Mhm.
Abdullah Hashem, the Western intel agencies, AROLP, CESNUR, and all of these circus clowns,
Yeah.
be exposed for who they are, and our message to humanity to do not fall victim to them. And that's just spread
Yeah.
the word of
Just spread
Shaykh
the word. You
Wahid,
can
the
do,
books and all that.
critical thinking, your independence and sovereignty are the most important things that maintain your mental health. This is what I
Yep.
say to clients. Critical thinking, number one, in every domain, right? And this is the first thing that any cult or organization like it will try to sabotage in a person is their critical thinking. Critical thinking is a weapon, it's your shield, most important thing. There are
Mhm.
occult versions of the same thing as well, on top of that. But all of that said, we can use this as a future podcast about how people can protect themselves in these times of uncertainty and deception.
Yes.
Um, I have a message for Massimo Introvini, and it's one word in Italian. Va fanculo, Massimo Introvini. Va fanculo. That's all I have to say to you. Um, that is all you deserve to be set to. And I have won this, and you can go fuck yourself as far as I'm concerned. I said it in Italian, and now I say it in English.
Jake,
Over to you.
this is beautiful, and please, if there's anything that you wish to address, or if anything I failed to ask you concerning this topic.
That's about all I have to say for right now.
So thank you, everyone, and until we come back again in the future for part 33. Nur alaikum.
Alaikum no.